Welcome to Dystopian Discussions. I'm T, and I'm a writer. I'm an English teacher, and I'm totally freaking out about the direction that our world is going in. So, what better way to assuage my anxiety than to read or reread dystopian and post-apocalyptic fiction, right? And then also make commentary and connections to the current world. You know, that makes sense, right? But don't worry, I'm not here for literary analysis. I'm not talking about motifs. I'm not talking about reliable narrators or what metaphors should make your brain explode, as I pointed out to you. I mean, I can, but no, I'm here to gossip about the characters, like they're people that you work with. Took some notes here. I'm here to whine, about how the crazy and unreal worlds that we're reading about, it's like becoming our reality, right? And so I'll do this by giving an assignment for what we're going to be reading, and that when we check back in, what we're going to talk about, and a little bit of a YouTube book club. But first, let's see, why am I starting this channel? So I watch YouTube, like, I'd love to say way too much, but I think that's just kind of the way of the world right now. So probably about as much as most people. Let's see. Oh, what keeps coming up into my timeline? It's like people that are saying like everybody who's over 40 should have their own YouTube channel. Stop procrastinating and start your channel. Like these things pop up into my feed, and I'm just trying to check out like some true crime or something, some crocheting videos. But, I thought about it. I'm like, okay, so, all right, if I start my channel, what am I going to talk about? I can talk about a lot of things. But I was thinking, it just kind of came to me a little bit earlier today. I'm going to talk about books. I mean, writer, English teacher, duh. But I'm thinking of definitely talking about dystopian fiction, post-apocalyptic, the world's gone crazy or has gone crazy and da 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 da. Those tend to be some of my favorite things to read and write about and teach about. So I figured, sure, why not? But not doing it like a class or anything like that. Like have like more fun with it, or just be like, oh my God, this stuff is really happening. Like having those kinds of conversations. Let's see. So, like, what book will be first? Okay. So the other thing is what's been happening lately is, just people talking about 2025 and things like that, right? So, I have like one of my prayer warrior friends, and she's been saying things like, praying on it and things like that. There's a lot of stuff happening, and, there's going to be like, it makes me anxious and stuff like that. But, the word that I got back was, hey, go back to basics, go back to the basics. And so, I had also been thinking about, like gardening, like picking up with my gardening again this year. Growing more of my own food to be a lot more, able to depend on that just in case or whatever. But at the same time, it's always nice to like, be with nature, get my hands in the dirt and that type of thing. So I'd already been thinking about that. So I'm like, oh wow, what's more back to basics than, growing your own food? Then one of my intuitive friends, had like one of her was it a channeling, a vision? I'm not sure, but she was like saying like stock up on food. This is, things are about to get crazy. Stock up on food. get a generator, um, you know, and then she was like, but, don't worry about it. It's like things are going to be crazy for a lot of people and stuff like that. And then eventually people are going to turn to black women to basically save the day. And that tracks. That tracks. So that was interesting. And then something that also came up into my feed, like I don't think I'd ever seen this person's videos before, but somehow it was in my feed. Um, Also kind of like, what's coming, and like, so I clicked on it and she had like a prophetic dream that was basically talking about a lot of craziness that's about to happen this year. Um, and one of the messages was, have your go bag ready. You might want to, pack a knife, that kind of thing, right? So, yeah, it's, kind of scary. But the weird thing is that after like all these things, right, I was like talking and I was like, oh my gosh. After I read this one book, okay, I used to always say that if the apocalypse ever happens, I want to have Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower in my go bag as a survival guide. I just remember like when I read it, there's so much stuff in it that I was like, oh my gosh, like you can make food out of that. You can, there's stuff in it. Like besides the fact that it's a great story, there's also very valuable information in it. And so I was like, it's not just a work of fiction. This is a survival guide. I'm sorry that is backwards. I'll figure that out as I learn more video stuff. But so definitely the first book that I want to read with you is Parable of the Sower. And so your first assignment, wrote it down. All right. So your first assignment is to read the first 4 chapters of Parable of the Sower, of Parable of the Sower. Read or reread, because I haven't read it in like a while myself. So I'm going to be rereading it. We're going to start off with the first 4 chapters. That gets us right into 2025. When you start reading it, you'll know what I mean. And then we'll come back, right? So I want you to take notes about what you learn about the main character and make any kind of connections to our current world. Okay? So that's our first assignment. So like I would like to say maybe like make a video like every week getting through like this book. Sometimes we may nerd out a bit and read it, a lot more. Or I might at least make more videos of it and you just space it out for when you watch it, But in the meantime, because we're going to be reading it and talking about it in the future, I definitely wanted to still talk about something today with this video. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read a short story that I wrote that was published in this book, Bikes Not Rockets. I really got to figure out how to flip this around. Okay, but Bikes Not Rockets. So my story the title is This Ain't the Apoca-Rich You Hoped For. Okay, so this was published, what year was this published? This was published in 2018. So 2018 it was published, and I believe I wrote it in like 2016. And submitted it, and like throughout the process and things, by the time it was published, it was 2018, right? So I wrote this in 2016, and it was just funny because like when the pandy happened, and everybody was like rushing, to get, toilet paper and stuff like that. The editor, Ellie Blue, she like, shouted me out like, oh my gosh, you were talking about this in your story, right? And it was just, it was so funny because I was. But what I'd like to do is go ahead and read my story in this video so that we are still in our, dystopian post-apocalyptic things, get it going. And, hopefully you'll leave me some comments, give me a like, subscribe. Let me talk to somebody out here about books and not just myself. Okay, so the title, This Ain't the Apoca-Rich You Hoped For. Mom used to yell at the TV about how unrealistic a show or movie was instead of turning the channel. Can you believe this? She turned to my playpen. No electricity in the apocalypse? Ed Bagley Jr. rides a bike to power his toaster every morning. There's water wheels and windmills. An apocalyptic event might knock out major power grids, yes, but these fools crying over the last freaking battery is ridiculous. I was too young to understand what she meant, and honestly, I was too old to be in a fucking playpen. But Mom yelled at her TV, and I had all my favorite things in reach. It worked for us. I had one teddy bear named Boomer, one doll named Angela, a pink plastic football, a bucket of jumbo blocks, the book with the mosquito, the book with the caterpillar, the book with the little brown princess, a sippy cup full of kiwi strawberry juice, a yellow crescent moon pillow, and a multicolored blanket with satin edges. Everything was in its place around me to play with at my will. Our puppy, Jumpman, couldn't get to anything. Neither could my little cousin on days when Mom had to watch him. My playpen was off limits to everyone but me. Don't run now, Mom yelled. Everybody knew them damn zombies was out on that side of the road, but you just had to go look for some gold-plated lighter your daddy left you when he died? Your dad's dead. You think he want you to have some lighter, or you think he want you to live, fool? That's when she'd impart her apocalyptic wisdom my way. So help me to God, Trini. I leave you something when I die. You better drop whatever it is if it'll keep you from getting eaten by some damn zombie, you hear? I heard her. I didn't know what the heck she meant by any of it then, but I heard her. Okay. I was still adorable and I knew it. I squeezed my fat fist together and threw it in the air with the same dedication my mom did when she raised a fist at other black people doing their thing or rising up on these bastards. When Mom wasn't watching one version of the end of the world or another, she was on her laptop blogging about one version of the world ending or another. Or she'd be tinkering around the backyard or the screened-in patio with some self-sustaining, earth-saving project that would surely get us off the grid one day. She built a chicken coop for chickens she planned to get. She bought single solar panels that she planned to climb up on the roof with. She had a compost to dump the raked leaves in and a ceramic owl she'd hid dollar bills in. She stored canned food and bottled water in big plastic bins in a crawl space under the house. Then one day, in the middle of whittling sharp points on the ends of broken branches that had fallen from the trees, she had her aha moment that would make us apoca-rich. Toilet paper, Trini. Toilet paper. All the books and movies got people bartering for cans of food and jugs of water, but somebody's got to have the TP market on lock. Toilet paper and tampons, girlie. We're going to be set when this fool in the White House finally pisses off the wrong person and all hell breaks loose. Grab your backpack. I'm going to find some coupons. By then, I was 6. The only way my parents could get me to go to school was to assure me I'd still have all my stuff. My dad bought me a backpack that was almost as big as I was. He tipped my playpen on its side and let me pick my favorite things. A year and a half later, the house was playpen free, and I didn't go anywhere without my stuff. My stuff was more sophisticated then. I was over the pink football, the pillow, the blanket. I had more books and logical necessities like tissues, bandages, dental floss, an umbrella, and a flashlight. Nia, what the hell? Dad yelled when he got home. The living room had 30 supersized cases of toilet paper plus 10 econo-packs of tampons. We were one broken refrigerator and an overflowing litter box of cat shit shy from an episode of Hoarders. Mom's face lit up. We're gonna be apoca-rich. Her toothy smile stretched her painted red lips across the creamy cocoa-ness of her skin. Her brown braided hair was wrapped up in a colorful cloth coiled into a cotton crown atop her head. She was stunning. Dad's slightly lighter brown face was wrinkled at the sides of his nose and across the forehead. He was angry. He yanked the knit cap off of his head, and the thick locks of his hair fell beyond his shoulders like an octopus who'd just given up. They had the worst argument I'd ever witnessed. It took a while before they heard me crying and moved the wall of toilet paper I'd built around me long before my dad ever got home. He stopped talking and held me in his arms. Then he kissed my forehead and left. The divorce didn't come right away, but it happened. The wild thing is that Mom didn't want to give up her stuff, but she couldn't afford the house on her own. She lost her marriage and her stuff. I learned not to hold on to anything you couldn't fit into a backpack. Trini, what should we do? I was straddling my bike in the middle of my tribe, as I called them. I was almost 17, tall, skinny, and bow-legged in my cut-off denim shorts and shredded MIA concert t-shirt. My hair was pulled back into one cloud of an afro puff, and I bit on my full bottom lip to keep it from quivering because all these people looked at me for answers, and at the moment, my take on our situation wasn't too helpful. Long story short, Mom was right. The fool in the White House pissed off the wrong person and all hell broke loose. Mom, who wound up working for the government to make enough money to take care of us, was killed in an explosion when a patriot drove himself into the federal building she was in. I stayed with Dad for a year. Then he was in prison for delivering newspapers, which was his night job. The news source he worked for had been added to the list of anti-American propaganda makers that morning. He rarely read that paper. He was always working. Of course, that didn't matter. He'd been awaiting sentencing for 4 years when a prison riot broke out and he was trampled to death. When he was first arrested, I had to move out of the country with my grandparents. I had to move out to the country with my grandparents. I kept waiting to hear that my dad was released and I can go home. But a different call came. Well, I looked down the road we'd all pedaled. We already know what's that way. The insane civil war that erupted between the conservatives and the liberals resulted in a lot of burnout buildings and makeshift roadblocks. Then, when the conservatives and the liberals realized the 1% was sitting back and counting money while the poor folks fought, they banded together against the rich. And wouldn't you know it, the 1% controlled the real army and the real power grids and the real internet and airwaves. They shut everything down, built walls around their mansions, and took their private jets to Europe or some elite tropical island. People who lived in rural areas like my grandparents thought they'd be fine. They grew their own food and enjoyed playing board games by candlelight. I used my mother's tutelage to prepare for the day looters would show up. The way I saw it, people in the closest city would exhaust all of their resources in a year and would consider venturing out for places where people had fresh food. Money was useless, so if they came across someone who wasn't interested in trading things, they'd probably take what they wanted and pray for forgiveness later. I began to trade my friends in ways to hide out, hoard things, and hit back if all else failed. We lasted a couple years with minor battles, but then came the gang. They rolled at least 40 deep, wearing blue jeans and hiking boots. At first glance, one would think they were some kind of scout troop without a distinct uniform. They sang friendly songs from almost forgotten pop radio stations, playlists. When they got to my cousin Sauce's house, the leader smiled at my aunt and asked if she had anything to trade. "I'm Justin," the leader said, with his blonde hair pulled up into a bun. "That there is my girlfriend, Gina." A friendly-looking redhead waved. "And he's my brother, James." He thumbed at a man who looked like a taller version of himself. James only nodded without smiling. The leader explained that all the other people were from his neighborhood in the city and they didn't have a lot of food left. "But we have some things that might be worth something to you and maybe we can trade you." Well, Sauce got his nickname from being my Aunt Imani's favorite taste tester for all the sauces she made. When the 1% blew up the main power plants to blind the world to their exodus, Aunt Imani finally listened to me about the need to stock up on food and resources for the day when bartering would be our only currency. She'd already had a load of mason jars full of spaghetti sauce, applesauce, soups, stews, and gravies. However, she got to work on extra stuff while she still had propane. "What you got to trade?" she asked Justin. Justin smiled again and beckoned for Gina to join him on my aunt's porch. "Gina, show this nice lady your jewelry." Gina pulled a velvet bag out of her knapsack and showed her some necklaces and earrings. "Well, I don't have much use for jewelry these days," my aunt said, "but since you guys are in need, I'll take those green earrings for a case of soup. I got 20 jars in a box. That should help you and your friends." My aunt smiled politely. Sauce and I were watching by the windows from the front corners of her living room, and I could tell her smile was forced. Aunt Imani never did have a poker face. I tilted my head to see Sauce on the other side. He was the closest to her, and he had one of Grandpa's shotguns. I raised one finger, our symbol to get ready, and he nodded. "Well, that is nice, miss," Justin said. "You need me to come in and get that heavy box for you?" Gina fumbled with the phone that held the emerald earrings. It distracted me, and it distracted her. Both of us missed Justin pull a handgun from behind and aim it for my aunt's face. "Oh my," was all my aunt could say. I ran towards her and Sauce punched through the side window with the tip of the shotgun. But it wasn't enough to stop Justin from shooting my aunt point blank. "No," I yelled as I caught Aunt Imani before she hit the floor. She and my mother looked so much alike. I wondered if my mom's face was just as peaceful before the bomb went off. Sauce fired a round that hit Gina in her chest. Justin barged in and aimed the gun at me. Sauce pulled the shotgun in and shot Justin in the arm. He dropped his handgun and stumbled back out onto the porch. "The door!" I yelled for Sauce. He pushed it and threw the deadbolt. "Ma!" he screamed. Unfortunately, there was no need. My aunt was gone, and a small army was outside. "They'll shoot through the door next, Sauce. We gotta go." I grabbed Justin's gun that landed near Aunt Imani's feet. Sauce picked up his mother and swung her over his shoulder. He was 2 years younger than I was, but a whole head taller. Aunt Imani's weight didn't seem to register as any kind of strain on him physically. The pain was all in his face. He motioned for me to grab the box of ammo he'd left on the window ledge, and we started to hustle on out to the backyard. My aunt had let Sauce and I build a bit of a fort in the crawl space under the back porch of their house back when she thought I was just as silly as her sister, my mom, for preparing for the worst. Sauce put her on the little air mattress we'd put in the corner, and I pushed the old stainless steel refrigerator door we'd found over the thin wooden door that was already a part of the house. Next, I grabbed a walkie-talkie and started to click our situation in Morse code. My tribe of believers all had walkies on the same station, and we taught ourselves enough Morse code to know what to do when we heard it. Above us, Justin and his gang were shooting. When the shooting stopped, we could hear his muffled commands to check upstairs and grab what you can. Every now and then he'd shriek, "Gina! They killed Gina!" And then something would crash, which I assumed was him breaking things like picture frames and my aunt's knickknacks. A few responses to my call trickled in. Most acknowledged that the message was received and that help would arrive soon. Our plan was that if ever an alert like this one was sent, the tribe would come together for a bigger defense. They needed to get their weapons and ammo, which was mostly hunting stuff like shotguns, crossbows, and knives. But Yoshi, who was black and never stepped foot in Asia, had a few samurai swords from his Japanophile collection. They would meet at someone's house, get on their bikes to head our way, then watch from a distance to figure out what they were working with. Sauce and I pulled together our arms, bullets for the shotguns, water balloons filled with vinegar and ammonia, pepper spray, a kitchen knife, and a baseball bat. Justin's gun was only missing a few rounds. Outside, we had a few booby traps that could slow a small mob down. But if all those people had guns like I figured, we were in trouble. Taps and pauses came through on my walkie that told me my tribe was in position. A moment later, a message came through to suggest we stay still until they sent an all clear. Saul shook his head. He wanted to go find Justin and kill him with his bare hands. I mouthed, "No, wait." Next, we heard a siren. Considering we run out of gasoline months ago and the local sheriff had left before that, I knew it was Beatbox, my girlfriend, making the sound into her cheerleader megaphone. "Go, go, go," I heard overhead. Heavy footsteps and noises of objects being dragged followed. Once everything was silent, Beatbox's amplified voice came over my walkie. "You guys okay?" "Yeah, babe," I replied. I would save the news about my aunt for face-to-face time. I coaxed Sauce to follow me out into the sunlight. We need help to bury her. We thought about checking the house, but decided we weren't ready. We grabbed clean shirts off of the clothesline and changed in silence. "Let's check in with the tribe and then go see Grandma." Sauce nodded, and we jumped on our bikes to meet up with the rest. Justin's gang came back the next day, a little sooner than I expected. They were more careful about choosing houses with people who were home alone, but they killed 3 more people and cleaned out their supplies of food. Beatbox's great-grandfather was one of the victims. Her sobbing voice broke the news over our station. I left our small funeral for my aunt just as Sauce began to cover his mother with dirt in Grandma's backyard. I met Beatbox in one of the hunting perches her great-grandfather had on the edge of his property. With binoculars, we watched Justin and the others make themselves at home. It was clear they'd claimed the land as their own. Considering they killed and looted from others, it was safe to say they'd keep going until they claimed the entire town. "It's what I'd do if I was a greedy bastard," I whispered to Beatbox, who didn't understand why Justin did what he did. There will always be some greedy fuckers who think they need to take anything and everything. This Justin guy probably ran some business, thought he was one of the 1%, and was shocked to find out he wasn't. He made himself the head honcho in his corner of the city, only what could he produce that others would need to bow down at his feet for? Not much. He needs to be in control. Your Pop has a nice piece of land. He has goats and chickens as well. I doubt they even found the pond yet. I stopped to think, you know what? He's expecting the 1% to come back. That's why he's taking things like jewelry. He thinks that when they come back, he'll have to be accepted as one of them if he's made himself the new 1%er. Beatbox nodded. Her hazel eyes were full of tears and sorrow. I watched her grieve. Was she thinking about fun times with her great-grandfather? The times they spent fishing in the pond, the days of her chasing the animals while he watched and laughed at her little legs and big determination? Now I could see her asking without asking. What did she have left of him? I brushed her wavy black hair out of her face. As long as you're breathing and can remember him, your Pop is alive. Do you understand? It's what my father told me about my mother when I wanted to bring all of her possessions with me to his small apartment after she died. It's what I reminded myself when my grandmother handed me the phone to let me hear for myself about what happened to my dad. Everything I had left of my parents was seen in the mirror or felt when I put my hand to my heart. It would take time for Sauce and Beatbox to understand after their great losses, but I was living testimony that it would be enough. We climbed down the tree and met up with the tribe near my aunt's fresh grave. The timing sucked, but I had to inform them. I don't think we can beat this Justin guy and his gang. What do you mean? Yoshi asked. They aren't here to grab some stuff and go. They're a fucking alien invasion. They're here to take over. Beatbox nodded. They killed my great-grandfather. They basically moved into his house. What? I didn't realize my grandma had come back outside. What are you talking about? Grandma, I looked to Sauce and back. My mom wasn't crazy. I don't know what else has to happen before you guys will take me seriously, but the apocalypse is here. Hollywood had everybody thinking it would be aliens or a bunch of synchronized earthquakes, but no. The enemy is a regular man who thinks he's entitled to take whatever he wants, and right now, he wants our town. What would anyone want with our town? Sauce kneeled over his mother's grave and traced his fingers across the soil. Grandma, they just want. It doesn't matter what. My mother offered to give them a case of soup and he shot her. He put his hand over his eyes. We didn't want to tell you, but I shot and killed one of them. Do you know what this guy did? He kept looting. Our grandmother drew her hand to her mouth with a gasp but didn't say anything for some time. Finally, her words cut through the silence. I'm getting too old to be hiking or riding a bike. My nose started to burn as my eyes blurred with tears. I thought about this too. Grandma was only in her 60s. She wasn't one of the yoga grannies that could run marathons back when people cared about that stuff, but she wasn't using a walker either. I tried to get her out on her bicycle again. I talked to her about escape routes. I figured I had to at least plant plans in her mind so that she could fend for herself if she ever had to. Grandpa's stroke left him in a wheelchair. His speech was slurred, but he'd already told me that we should just leave him behind if shit got real. All I want is my Bible and a bullet, he struggled to say. He had a revolver. I made sure he had it handy that morning. His Bible was where it always was, on the piano between photos of him and Grandma at their wedding, and my mom and aunt in a pile of colorful leaves. Grandma, Sauce and I stocked up your basement a while ago. We can help get Grandpa down there and show you how to lock yourselves in. I think if we get